Oh my gosh, look at that. Like, look at that. Those are the maple trees. They're already budding and it's still February. So this will be my 5th year of beekeeping, and gosh, let me tell you, the amount of mistakes I've made are seriously ridiculous. So since spring is practically knocking on our door, I figured I'd make a video talking about all of the mistakes I made, all 10 of them, so that hopefully you don't make the same mistakes I did. Come on. So all of these hives I just split this year. There's 9 in total. These are all brand new, and I decided to try out plastic foundations. Now, some of them was okay, but a lot of them they didn't really like. I don't think that I waxed them properly. I think I waxed them actually too much, if that's a thing. Okay, so this is probably the #1 mistake that everyone always has when they first start beekeeping is they buy plastic foundation that is not pre-waxed because it is the cheapest they can find, and turns out the bees do not like it if it's not waxed properly. Now, over the years, I did learn that it's actually the type of wax that you use to wax the foundations that's going to dictate if they can draw it out properly. So you want to get wax that's from a beekeeper or even from your own bees, but if you're starting out, find it from a beekeeper that sources their wax from the wax cappings they get off of their honey. This wax is prime for the bees and they will draw it out so crazy fast. But here's some videos of what it looks like if you don't wax them correctly. They're going to draw it out all wonky like this, and the problem with this is this frame will start interfering with the frame next to it because that's not how they generally want to have their cells built. Now, I don't know why they don't just automatically draw it out. Bees can be a little bit high maintenance sometimes, so yeah, just take my word for it. But what I'm noticing is this hive is not building up at all. And if she was... Okay, I'm going to fully call myself out on something, and that is, so genetics are incredibly important for how your hive builds up, yes. But in the beginning years of my beekeeping journey, I blamed a hive not building up because of solely genetics. When in reality, one of the biggest mistakes I was making, and so many other people make, is they will put on a box on their hive before the hive is even ready for another box to be added. And I know where this comes from, where especially as a new beekeeper, we're constantly hearing, don't let your bees swarm, you gotta be careful, always watch. And as a new beekeeper, how do you even know how to tell if your hive is about to swarm? So just to be precautious, we're like, hey, let's just throw an extra box on right now just in case so that I know they're not going to swarm. Well, the problem with this is when you are giving them extra room than they can actually handle, they have to patrol that area, and it takes way more energy for them to maintain the temperature and to keep out foreign pests and invaders. Whereas if you let them build up and be super, super condensed in that box, the bees, as they exponentially start to grow, they exponentially, keyword there, start to grow. So by the time you're ready to put on another box, you want your bees to be absolutely bubbling over before you put that box on. So by doing this took my bees from looking like this, where you don't really see a whole lot of bees on top of the frames, and it looks honestly kind of weak for a hive, to all of a sudden looking like this. When the bees are condensed in a smaller space, they perform so much better. Bees in this box, bees in the bottom box, bees hanging outside the box, brood all over. Yeah, we did good on this one. All right, so this is what they're looking like. It was a little chaotic there for a minute, so yeah, now I'm back. All right, so on this one, I've been trying out year after year, and I finally came to the conclusion that first and foremost, walkway splits in Michigan are almost pointless. They're so frustrating. It takes at least 6 weeks before you even have a laying queen again. And by that time, your hive is so insanely weak, you would have been better off just buying a virgin or a mated queen and having that hive built up in that time. Especially, like I said, in Michigan, we don't really have that long of a flow or even of a warm season. So you really have to capitalize as much as you can on the season that we do have so that the bees can be built up in time for winter time. Now, you can probably get away with doing a larger split. What I'm showing you here are 2 and 3 frame splits, which again, I would not do these in Michigan. They are completely pointless. Now, if you were to just take a whole entire deep off of another deep, now that actually might be worth something to try. Now, the only other thing that I have noticed with that is that it takes forever for the queen to actually come back. Whereas if you do a split and you do a walkaway split into a nucleus colony, she seems to come back a lot faster, but then again, you're still sacrificing that time to actually have that box built up. But to kind of piggyback off of what I was talking about in the last segment, also when you are doing these splits, having your bees in the smallest space that they possibly need is absolutely huge. That's why I love nucleus colonies. So if you aren't able to purchase any wood for nucleus colonies, because I know some people are on a tight budget when it comes to beekeeping, and beekeeping can be kind of expensive. Another thing that you can do is you can take a little piece of insulation foam like you see here, and you can cut it to the exact dimensions of your hive. So you can just slide it in and condense it down this way. Now, they still have that empty gap in the side of the hive, so that could potentially breed other pests if they end up finding it. But I did find that they seem to do pretty well doing it this way. One other thing I will mention, though, is that that piece of styrofoam, they're still going to be able to go onto either side. So if you want to put two hives into one box, you have to particularly make either a lid, a bottom board, and or a inner cover that will actually go to that. So we got 2 cells right there that are fully capped, which means they are ready to swarm if they haven't already sent the queen out. Yeah, they're all over on this one down here too. So looks like I'm gonna be doing another split. There's a charged cell right there that has a larva inside. Dang, these buggers, they really just got going fast. Last time I checked them, they... Okay, so hopefully this gives many of you an aha moment, because the moment that I realized this, I never lost a swarm again unless I was just being lazy in my checking. And that is, the moment you see a capped queen cell, it is too late. Your queen has already left. And I say it like this because in the past, when I went into a colony and saw capped swarm cells, I thought, hey, I'll just remove them and the queen will still be there. Well, that ended up leaving the hive queenless, and that created a whole nother array of problems. But if you go into a hive and you see charged cells like this, then your queen is still in there. She waits until the queen cells are capped before she then skedaddles out and swarms. So if you do end up seeing charged cells, what you can do is take the queen out and create what is called an artificial swarm. This is going to make her think that she swarmed when actually she didn't, and just put her into another box. You can then utilize those queen cells and let them keep developing before you move them into splits, since they're already going to be in a really strong colony, since that colony was about to swarm to begin with. But just as a heads up, when you see swarm cells, if they are fully capped, yes, your queen is gone. And you're probably going to want to leave some in there so that they can actually replace her. Already started preparations. I don't want them to move their queen. So that kind of stinks. Still blows my mind, the fact they're wanting to swarm already. But this is a faster, easier way to check to see if your hive is already preparing to swarm versus taking out every single frame. That could take forever. And this is the way that a lot of commercial beekeepers do it too. Okay, so since there are already swarm cells in here, I'm just going to take this box completely, put it on this bottom. Okay, so since we're already on the topic of swarming, let's talk about checkerboarding. So checkerboarding is something that a lot of us beekeepers use to build out frames because bees don't like their brood nest being broken up. So the theory is for you to put a frame that needs to be drawn out right in the middle of their brood nest, and they will start drawing it out like crazy. Now, this works amazing, except when you do this before they have their wax glands going in the springtime. I found that this causes them to swarm, and they don't like it. So going forward, whenever I want to start checkerboarding frames in a colony, especially in early spring, something I'd suggest doing is putting something in there to stimulate their wax glands first. Whether that be just one frame for them to start drawing out, or even if they have a little bit of extra room up at the top of their box that they could start drawing something, just something to start stimulating that while also feeding them at the same time. That is going to be your best bet, rather than just throwing in a bunch of checkerboarded frames and having your hive swarm on you. So since it is so late in the year, I will be adding more brood than one normally would, But what I'm going to be looking for is
Okay, so if you guys have been following along with the channel, then you guys saw me make this huge mistake back in 2022. And that is doing splits on my bees way too late in the year, especially for Michigan. So I came across a lecture by Mike Palmer talking about the use of double-story nucs to help rebuild his apiary and help with his winter survival rate. So I was super inspired by this and was like, hey, I want to do this right now. And I did not care one bit about the timing of it. So I started doing this experiment in August and ended up splitting down all my hives into all of these nucleus colonies that I built. Which in theory, this would have been great if it was a different time of year, but the bees work solely off of timing. So what ended up happening is I had all these frames that they needed to build out, and they didn't have enough resources to build out those frames, let alone they also had to have their own laying queens, which, look at this, I have queens in a bag in cages. Don't ever do this. I lost a lot of queens this way because they started stinging each other through the cages. Keep them separated, just a warning. But anyways, so I had to introduce some queens to them because the walkway splits didn't work. The grafts that I tried doing, I only got like 5 back because that was my very first time ever grafting. It was honestly just a whole nightmare that I would not suggest ever doing. If you want to make splits, really the cutoff for Michigan that I usually say is the 1st of July if you're wanting to do walkaway splits, and the 2nd week of July, or maybe even the 3rd week of July, you could probably push it to that if you're wanting to do splits with like a mated queen or a virgin queen. But yeah, if you want hives that are actually going to be strong enough to make it through the winter, think about timing and how the bees work. You cannot trick a bee's timing. They know what's best.
No, I don't think it's weak anymore. No, does that look weak to all of you? That's hive beetle prevention. Oh. It's a biological hive beetle. Polyester. Works pretty good.
It was a 4x4.
And so how does it kill them?
The beetle crawls in, can't get back out because the wings are sticking out. They crawl in and can't back up.
Okay.
Okay, so I never took small hive beetles seriously, and this was honestly probably one of my biggest mistakes, not actually taking them seriously. So just a warning, the next couple of videos are probably going to make you cringe. So small hive beetles are these little tiny black beetles that are a pest to honeybees. They like brood, they like honey, they like pollen, they like everything in that colony, and they will absolutely devour it and just try to keep reproducing and spread as many of them as they can throughout the hive. So I never took them seriously because I always thought that bees could manage them on their own, which normally they do. But this last year, I watched strong colony after strong colony just completely collapse because of small hive beetles. They would take over and it would turn the whole entire hive into literal slime. That is what they do when they start producing larvae. So going forward, I'm always going to have those little polyester cloths that you saw Ron, he's a commercial beekeeper, what he was talking about. I'm going to start putting those on the very bottom board of every single hive just as a precaution. I think it's good to constantly be trying to keep your pests down and to manage them in your hive just so it puts less stress on your colony, because there's a lot of factors that are coming into your bees all at once. Now, part of this could have also been the mite loads could have been high, so that could be why they fell susceptible to small hive beetles. But going forward, I'm always going to keep an eye out for those. And this leads me right into the next mistake that I made, and that is having too many hives condensed in one place. And the reason I say this is once it starts getting into the fall time, when the nectar sources start to go down, robbing starts to go through the roof. And the problem we saw this year is because we had so many colonies in one area, some stronger than others, some weaker, that caused them all to just go crazy with robbing, and it took out a lot of hives because of that. Let alone also, each area can only support so many bees because there's only so many resources in the area. So you might as well spread them out so that you can maximize as much as you possibly can.
Look at that brood pattern. Holy smokes. I haven't seen a brood pattern like that since VIP.
Before you think it's a one-off, these ones are hatching currently, or emerging currently.
Oh yeah, that's beautiful. I like that a lot.
Oh, check this one out.
And this leads me to my 9th mistake that I made. And honestly, it is these migratory lids. Now, there's probably a trick to them that I haven't figured out yet, but we got a bunch of pollination hives this year so that we can start pollinating pumpkins and start dipping our toes in that. Well, we overwinter all of our hives outdoors. Some commercial beekeepers will overwinter their hives indoors, so they probably don't have to even think about this or worry about this, or they'll even send them to like California and or like Florida and places like that. But we overwinter all of our colonies outdoors, and what we found is these migratory lids, I don't think they were designed to be overwintered outdoors. And the reason I say that is because since they don't have anything that kind of like tucks over, like dips over the hive body like you see with a telescoping cover, a lot of water started leaking in underneath the cover. We still had our insulation foam down to keep the hot on the inside and the cold on the outside from clashing and creating condensation underneath the lid. But there was still water from the rain and the snow melting that was running in between the crack of the lid and the box itself. So that ended up taking out some of our hives, which honestly is the saddest thing to see when you do everything right, but it was something in the equipment that failed to work properly, and that's why you lost your colony. So if you guys have any pointers of how we can still utilize these lids when overwintering outdoors, please send them our way.
Yes, I will chime in on that because the mice are really bad. They chewed through the frame. Like, oh my God. Not a fan of that at all.
Okay, so mice in the wintertime can seriously be a problem, and I never had a problem with this when I had my hives located somewhere that was out on like a field or something like that, but now that I'm starting to put my hives in the woods, mice are such a huge problem. So one of the mistakes I made was not putting a mouse guard on your hive. This could literally save your hive, especially because once the mice move in and they start breeding and they just start tearing up the whole bottom of the hive, if there's bees in the upper part of the hive and it's cold outside, they're not really going to do anything to actually be able to attack those mice. So those mice will then start to take out the colony and will end up killing your hive. Mice can be a huge nuisance when it comes to beekeeping. I know they're cute, and I know they're these cute little fuzzy creatures, but when it comes to beekeeping, it can literally be devastating going into your hive like this.
Isn't that just lovely? No, this is not your home.
But regardless of what happens this year, remember that you started beekeeping because you wanted a challenge. So be prepared when that challenge really shows up this year. And most importantly, don't be afraid to make mistakes. As you can see, I've made so many mistakes, but honestly, that is the only way we learn, and that's how we improve and grow as beekeepers and as humans too. So I hope this video was helpful, and hey guys, spring is coming very soon, so I'll see you guys soon, and don't quit and be fit.
41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51. 51 cells.